How do true masters influence your craft? Who are some of the best knife makers in the world? And how is the ocean a great metaphor for life? If you'd like to find out, then you're in the right place. Welcome to Between Views. I'm your host, Aleksayev. This podcast aims to cast light on and connect you with inspirational people, identify them as potential mentors in your journey, and share their stories and wisdom with the world. In this episode, we converse with Nexus Lurie about his masters and mentors, great places to source information, and how other aspects of Nexus's journey have influenced his life. Hope you enjoy. The first question, Nexus, that I have for you for part 2 is, who are some people that you admire in the knife making world?
So I'm not really one of those people that, when I get into something, I'll start, looking up every other person that's sort of in that world. I'm a martial artist. I do kickboxing and I watch a little bit of UFC, and I know some of the guys, but I'm not like an avid watcher and supporter. And it's the same with sort of knife making. I don't really know too many other sort of big names. There are a few sort of smiths that I watch sort of online on YouTube that have inspired me and where I've learnt a lot of my technique from, in terms of like, do this, don't do that, how to build things. Namely, the one, his name is Ilya, and the channel that he's on is called That Works on YouTube, and it's him and his friend Matt that are forging a lot of these things. They used to be the old Man at Arms channel. So if you look up That Works on YouTube, you'll find some videos, and the smith, his name is Ilya. I'm not sure of his heritage. I think he's half Japanese, half something, and he's very informative and very experienced and is a brilliant smith. And he also focuses mostly on the traditional aspects of forging. So the way that I built my box bellow and the way I constructed my forge was through watching videos that he had made, as well as forging techniques and tips, basic things from how to actually pick up and swing your hammer. Stuff that people don't really think about, but it's actually very important when you're swinging something that weighs that much for 4 or 5 hours a day.
Of course. What about people in general who you look up to?
Yeah,
I guess your role models or mentors in a way.
Yeah, I've lived in a part of the world where the lifestyle is pretty easygoing and laid back, and there aren't too many people around that are striving to really, they're not pushing themselves to become better versions. Some people are just in the sort of rat race of their 9 to 5, and they kind of go to the gym or they do a little bit of this and that. But there have been some people that I met over the years that have, inspired me to want to keep pushing myself. Some friends over the past, people that I've worked with in life-saving, guys that were just, machines out there in the water, be it swimming, surfing, paddling, rescues. They're just like bloody units, and that was a bit of inspiring for me. I was like, if they can do it, I can do it. I know I'm strong. I know I'm strong-willed and determined. So a good friend of mine, Josh Tuck, he was one of those guys. A bit crazy in other ways, but in some ways, like, really, really disciplined. My sensei, I do kickboxing. My sensei, G. Bleeker, great, good friends, very funny. But I do look up to him in the sense that he's, he started something later in life. He was 25 when he started kickboxing, and he pushed and did his sensei grading within about 5-6 years, I think. And that takes a lot of dedication and discipline, and it is a martial art. It's you're training your body and your mind and your spirit to push through, be it intense pain from training physically, mentally wrapping your head around the idea of doing stupid numbers of reps of, push-ups or whatever it is that you're doing. In other aspects of mentors, or at least people that I enjoy spending time with because I know I learn from them. You're one of those people, Aleksayev. Definitely spending time with you in the States. I've learned quite a lot. not just about myself, but how to work with other people and how, we should look at ourselves to, what should we do to change, to work out the situation better, because that person isn't necessarily going to think the same way and do the same thing, or pick up on your cues. So how do we work with that and make a better program or make things happen overall? There's a couple other guys, that I work with up there that they're headstrong, they might be stubborn in some ways, might not be the most creative or outgoing, but they're focused in what their lane is and they stay to it. And I think there's something, I wouldn't say necessarily admirable, but something that I can appreciate and respect about that, focusing on what you know and trying to push and perfect that. And I think that then falls down to, what I do. It's like whatever I'm doing, I know I'm doing it because I've known that that's what I like doing and I want to get better. So I'm just going to focus on that. And I'm not closed off to trying new things, but I have a pretty good idea of what I think I should be doing.
Awesome. How about books, information, or media that's inspired you?
So in terms of, relative to blacksmithing, forging, and knife making, I don't really read a lot. It's just not my thing. I'm more of a visual and kinetic learner. I learn from doing things and seeing things rather than sort of reading. Sort of certain audio cues will stick with me. Like I said, that is it Ilya from That Works. Another master smith, who's sort of the other end of the spectrum really, is a guy called Kyle Royler. And he's a master smith, and he's more of a perfectionist, if not pedantic almost. Way more technical and sort of modern with the equipment that he uses and the way he does things, and not very traditional at all. Mostly gas forges, working with all clean steel, new tools, stuff like that. But he produces the most beautiful, beautiful work. And it's all through his attention to detail and need for perfection in things. In terms of sources of information that have inspired me, most of what I do is I learn through YouTube, to be honest. It's, like I said, visual learning is easier for me. I can watch things a few times, and, when people watch something or when they're filming and they're explaining and they go back and they voice over it again, they tend to be able to explain something that was in the moment, and then they backtrack and go over it again and give you a bit more depth and detail around that instance. For me, when it comes to reading, I feel like, something that's been read and is put in a book, it's set and is somewhat inflexible when it comes to learning, because you don't necessarily have as much context around that sentence or that paragraph. And when something's done visually, he might be saying something, but you're seeing him do something with his hands and the way he's holding it or moving it, and you can pick up on those. So I follow a few pages on Instagram. One that's really cool is called Eating Tools, and they post work from smiths from all over the world, and it's just inspirational to see cool designs, see how people have worked something like copper, which is a very soft metal, into a knife with high carbon steel, which is really hard, So I wouldn't say that there's a lot of research that I'm doing that's inspiring me, but I do have a lot of feed, as it were, that's keeping me motivated and inspiring me to try new techniques.
Sure. What about in your business? What has actually helped you most with knife sales?
So, funnily enough, it's the thing that's helped me with selling my knives is letting go and not caring about the small imperfections. The hardest judge on your work is yourself, and that's I spend hours making this blade and doing things, and then I know I kind of messed up a little bit there. I didn't finish that as nicely as I would like to have, and I have all these ideas of what I really wanted the blade to be like. And then in terms of what the finished product is, because of how much time or effort I really did put in, I'm not 100% like that's exactly how I wanted it to be. But when it comes to people objectively, looking at the knives, they say, wow, they're comparing it to their kitchen knife at home. They're not comparing it to the knife that I made yesterday. That's sort of what I've realized, is that I just need to kind of say it's done. I know that I have put time in. It's solid. It's practical. It works. It does look good. And then leave it at that. And I think that's what's really helped me to sell more, is that I've just stopped really kind of holding on to the ones that I thought, oh no, I can't sell it because of that little mistake or this or that. And purely just having more product out there, having more knives for sale in, more than one venue or two venues. And now that it's not the first or second year, it's now the third year, fourth year that I've been doing this, sort of actually marketing myself and selling them, there's like, oh, this guy's like, yeah, I bought one of those knives, or my friend bought one of them, and like they're really good, and it's giving me a bit more of a positive feedback, which gives me a bit more motivation to say, okay, it's people like what they're buying and they're willing to pay the price, that I ask, and they hold out and they don't, just disintegrate or break after they're like out of my hands, so it's reassuring in that sense.
I guess one thing it makes me think of is like, at the beginning, you were completely fascinated by those knives that you were mucking around with, the beginner knives, like the little hatchets, the little, old blades that you were turning into new ones. You were fascinated by them at one point. You've moved on from that now, so you're looking at better quality blades that you're creating, you're putting out better and better work. You're slightly judgmental of your own work, right? Because you want it to be great.
Yeah.
But people who don't make knives or know anything about how a knife should be made, they're looking at those beginning ones. I know when I walk through your house and look at all of your different types of blades, I'm completely fascinated by all of them. I would buy all of those if I could take them in my luggage.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess you're just making me realize that with your content, once again, we've heard this before on Between Views, it doesn't need to be perfect to put it out there. Should put it out there because it's something you created, because that's actually what's really important, isn't it? The creative act and putting it out there. Typically you'll find someone finds it valuable.
Yeah.
What about in your life in general? What would you say are some really important aspects of your life? Could be like part of your moral, could be some people, could be whatever.
Yeah, so, I live in a pretty special part of the world. And I think, everybody likes to think that, home is great, it's good, but objectively speaking, I live in a really special part of the world. We have a lot of foreign tourism that comes through here in Plettenberg Bay, and a lot of people that want to buy and move and live here. It's just, we have a really good balance of, the ocean, the coastline, along with the forests, the good weather with the bad weather, the hot with the cold, the good with the bad, it all is just a good balance all around of a healthy lifestyle here. And, it's a clean area, it's not polluted, the food quality is still good, the water quality is still great. So in terms of my life around here, aspects that I found that have, put me where I am now, I was born in the sort of mountains and the forest and lived there for about 10 years, and then we moved closer to town, and then I started life in town. So I've got a really good balance of nature in the forest life, and also the beach and the ocean, surfing. And surfing has taught me a lot, just about, pushing myself first of all, getting better at doing something that's quite difficult to learn and has a long learning curve, which then becomes enjoyable. And also just the understanding that, we're sitting in this ocean waiting for a wave, and we're reacting to what Mother Nature gives us, and we're trying to have some fun doing that. And keeping that mindset in life that, we're floating in this giant mad world, And every now and then, a really awesome opportunity comes up in front of you, and you need to be able to react and jump on it, but not just take it, have fun with it, play with it, do something cool, and then jump off at the end when you see there's another one coming or this one's about to end off. And I think for my life down here, I've been given enough opportunity for personal growth in, physical aspects definitely, but also mentally, to where self-discipline is a big factor. And going into something like deciding that I want to put more time and effort into making my knives requires a bit of sacrifice to say, well, I'm not going to focus on some form of other career right now, sort of like a, degree or 9-to-5 work life, but focus on something that's a bit more artistic and has, more risk involved of not being successful, but also has far more reward, I think. And that's ultimately, I think, what I've done with my life is I've chosen to go for things that have more reward, personal reward at the end of the day, personal growth, than chasing things that I think objectively we think of people saying you're successful, you have a great job or career, there's that pressure, I think, that a lot of people at our age feel that we have to have, and you get pushed into that, and sometimes you never really go and do the things you really want to be doing or enjoying because you feel like you're going to get judged, or you're not going to make enough money out of it, and you're not going to be on a good path anymore, But being in this part of the world where a lot of people do that, where they're on their own path and they make these changes and start going for these different, career paths and choices, I've seen that, as long as you're consistent and you're motivated to want to be better at it for the sake of improving yourself, you'll be successful. You'll be good.
Nice wisdom there. Leaves us with just one more question, and it's actually the question that's left for you by the previous guest, who you don't know.
Oh, right.
But you never know. You may one day. His name is Chris. He is the owner of Josie Coffee, my favourite coffee roasting place down in Newcastle. And his question for you, Nexus, was, and I guess to finish it up, do you have a question for our next guest on the show?
Yeah, I guess what you do to inspire people.
Right. So, don't want to toot my own horn too much. I mean, a little bit's kind of nice,
Yeah, toot it up.
So like I said, it's a small town that I've grown up in, and I was quite a big kid, to the point where at some point I got like kind of obese. At age 13, I had about 112, close to 115 kilos, which it's just on the plus side of about 250 pounds, And, I had issues, depression, things like that, all this, as most teenagers do at that point in life. Nothing unusual. But, apart from a bit of push from family, mostly my dad, shifting diet changes in the house, eating a little bit more cleanly, a little more salad every night, and a bunch of other stuff. There was a internal cry for change, and I decided that I had to start, changing. I had to become more active. I needed to start doing things that I'd always kind of thought were really cool and wanted to do, but just didn't for the, I was too scared, getting, the sake of being embarrassment or getting embarrassed. Embarrassment's a very strong emotion, and it prevents a lot of people from trying new things. I've always enjoyed being in the water. I've always been good at swimming and stuff, but I never really got into surfing until I was about 17. And for the first 2 years, I was embarrassing myself most of the time out there. But you push through that, and you force yourself to keep going, and you get better. I started working out, going to the gym. I was never really into the idea of pushing heavyweight, but more kind of doing high repetition, compound movements, things like that. And that coupled with life-saving, swimming, being at the beach, my body changed. I became quite toned, I became fit, strong, and people noticed that. And not just, my age friends, but people that have known my parents, other older peers that I've known. And even kids that were younger than me that I didn't really know, but it kind of seen me around. They started looking up to me somewhat as a role model. And I started finding this out when I started instructing lifeguards. How a lot of these young boys, they would talk to me and ask me, like, how do I train? How do you get to, how do I get to look like you? How do I get to surf like you? How do I get to, do these things that you do? And I just said, well, you got to kind of just start doing it, and you got to want to do it, And now working with kids, be it in the States, be it down here, of lots of different ages, the youngest being 7-year-olds to the oldest being 17, 18-year-olds, The questions are different, but the look that they give you is the same. And the look is that when they look at you, they're like, I want to do or be like what you do. When you're a little kid and you look up at somebody who's big and kind of strong, you're like, that's kind of inspirational. When you're a teenager who's just finishing high school and you kind of lost with what you want to do, you have pressure for going to study or you don't know, and you see someone who's kind of seems to have things kind of sort of figured out, or at least seems like it on the surface. I come across pretty calm and collected to a lot of people and just easygoing. I think that gives a lot of these young guys a little bit of hope that, like, okay, we can kind of do what Nexus has done, and he's doing all these kind of cool things that he likes doing, and he's not focusing on chasing some sort of, like, career path that's, set, focused in one direction. That there's still a way of, doing well for yourself, as it were. And for me, it's mostly it's the physical aspect, that I've changed my body physically, and also just what I'm capable of now, and what people have seen, and how, having that discipline has got me to a position where I was training lifeguards, and not just training, but I became the club captain, and I was training adults to do stuff like that, and working with the NSRI, and then progressing rather to where I'm now starting my own business with the knives, and I work overseas, and just a couple different factors all together. And when you come from a small town in South Africa, the idea of being able to go work in America is very distant and seems almost like impossible for a lot of kids unless you've got a degree in something after university level, or you have enough wealth backing from parents to send you out there. For those of us that are in the middle, figuring out the ways and means can be kind of tricky. And because that's what I'm doing, I think there's some people out there that are noticing and are looking up to me and asking how to get on that same path. And I'm sharing all the knowledge and skills I have. I've had some boys come and make some knives with me over the last couple of years, and it's been really great fun, and it's something that I want to keep doing. I don't necessarily think of myself as a role model for anybody, but I don't shy away from the idea of helping or inspiring or trying to, nurture someone if given an opportunity.
Good answer. So you may not think of yourself as a role model for anybody, but you certainly have been for me today. And you've helped me learn an awful lot about knife making and a few little facets of role modeling, which I kind of was playing with in my mind as well. It seems like just by actively changing yourself for the better in terms of your physicality and I guess what you're doing to help others, the training and things like that you're doing, you're naturally getting people look towards you, and it's actually just your positive actions for yourself viewed by others that are the things that are inspiring people.
Yeah.
So I find that very interesting and worth reflecting on. So the final part, mate, is you just need to leave a question for the next guest. You don't know who it is, so it doesn't really matter what you ask, but you can always find out the answer by coming back and listening to the next episode after your own.
Good.
So do you have a question that you would like to leave for our next guest?
Yeah. Okay. So the focus of this has been, kind of the knives, and my inspiration for knives was cooking. Really, I like to cook. So, I mean, it's not going to be much of a deep question or philosophical, but I think something that could have a lot to play with. What is your favorite thing to cook? Why? And then how?
Okay. What's your favorite thing to cook? Why? And how? Brilliant. Well, that brings us to the very end of this episode of Between Views. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you having spent the time with me and sort of taken me under your wing to show me a few things about knife making, and also just taking care of me all this week on this awesome adventure we've had. Adventure guys doing adventures in your country. I learn a lot about you, and it's really cool. Just want to share that reflection with people listening at home, that you can get a really good idea about someone by going and sort of seeing where they come from and seeing their home country and where they live, and it helps you understand your friendships better, and I would recommend it for anybody. But Nexus, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sure more than just me will appreciate this information. You did a fantastic job. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's been brilliant. I'm glad that you finally made it down here, after planning for a couple of years, and I was stoked when you got down. Weather wasn't the best for the week, but we got to do a bunch of cool things, and yeah, I'm glad I got to show you my little bit of home here.
Brilliant.
Looking forward to some more adventures.
And if I've learned anything, I'd say this week was lekker brew.
Lekker brew, yeah. Shot, mate.
Thank you for listening to part 3 of our interview with Nexus. That was also our final part. If you enjoyed what you heard, then please jump over to @KnivesByNexus or knivesbynexus.com and give them a follow. You'll never regret buying a Nexus. It's a product that I've used for years at work and will continue to do so. Secondly, if you're one of our regular listeners, could you please leave a star rating for us on Spotify, Apple Music, or YouTube? This is the best way you can support us, and we can continue to bring you more and more episodes. Or if you really found the information valuable, you're welcome to make an offer of scrumptious cup of Make More Podcast Juice at buymeacoffee.com/betweenviews. In other news, Between Views is always looking for collaborators. If you want to join the team, then please reach out on Instagram. Finally, if you know someone who deserves to be interviewed or just have some feedback, then send us an email at betweenviewsbv@gmail.com or message us on Instagram. Thanks again, and see you soon. Between Views.